welcome everybody once again. The Florida West Coast Fishing Report, Captain George, and we have on the air live with us tonight one of our weekly suppliers of video, Captain Mike Haynes from Crystal River. Hello, Mike.
Good evening, guys. How are you doing?
Good, Mike. How you doing?
Good.
We're all doing great, thanks to the good Lord.
Yes.
Right.
And you see, the weather wasn't too bad today. It looks fairly good tomorrow, but then Wednesday it all breaks loose again. At least down here, according to what I'm looking at.
Yeah, one front after another, it seems like, for this week.
I mean, right now it looks like it's going to be up to 20-something, 30 mile an hour on Wednesday down here. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's been windy. I mean, every day that I've gone out, the last 3 trips, it's been windy one day after another. I'm sure you're seeing that too up by you.
Yeah, we are. And the winds have shifted from southerly to northerly in those just few since Saturday.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, Sunday was horrible. Didn't even try. But today was a little better. It kind of calmed down a little bit out there, but definitely some northeast winds now, and it'll probably be that way for a few days.
Yeah, the afternoon definitely mellowed out quite a bit. I was surprised. It laid right down. I was like, but in the morning when I went out to go catch bait, it was honking, man.
It was. Yep, and cold again.
Yeah,
it was cold here all day today. I mean, it was in the 60s.
Yeah,
sure.
Finally got up to around, I don't know if it even got up to 70 where I was at. I think it was 60 something all day.
Yeah, I debated and I was like, you know what? I'm going to bring that extra sweat jacket because you can always take it off, And I was like, so glad that I actually did.
Yeah, I brought the long johns on today thinking, hey, I'll take them off if I need to, but I didn't have to all day. It stayed pretty cool. So
yeah, and you're north.
Over the years, I learned one thing. It's easier to take something off if it gets hot than not to have it on if it's cold.
Correct.
I tell you, I'm trying to send all this stuff since I got in here late to all the groups. But anyway, Mike, tell us a little bit about Crystal River. What's going on up there?
Well,
what's the sheephead fishing?
It's sheepshead season up here. They get out there on the rocks, and we didn't get out there today just because this morning it's just blowing a little bit. So we're going to get out there tomorrow and get on some of those rocks. But sheepshead bite has been pretty consistent. It hasn't really, fired off just yet. We're still waiting for some of those females to come on, but we found a lot of males waiting for those females to show up to start the spawning process. So I am guessing probably tomorrow will give me a determination of what's kind of going on. Because the last time I was out there was Saturday, and again, nice fish, just not a ton of them just yet on those rocks. So I would anticipate it's probably going to be this week or end of this week that those sheepshead will really start moving in, and we'll be gangbusters for a couple of weeks at least.
I think that's what you're going to find out. But they're running late though.
They are.
It used to be, I know for me down here, it used to get cold in December. I remember some of those times.
Yeah.
And it would be in here in the bay and the channels, third week, almost Christmas week.
Right.
And then it got to be a little later. And over the years now, it seems like it's February, sometimes almost the end of February. And then they're here for a short period because they came in late. So they don't hang around a lot.
Yeah. It's definitely a little later this year. Like I said, not seeing the numbers just yet, which is surprising. Because usually that first big moon of February, you really start seeing them move around. And we've already had the big full moon,
right,
and just still not seeing them just yet. But and I don't know if you guys are experiencing the same thing we are up here, but it seems like the tides are about an hour to 2 hours late than what they're predicting. Yeah. And I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
I've had to actually switch tide charts that I was using for like quite a few years because it's been up to 2 hours off. It's almost like they're getting the low tide and the high tide correct, but the in between, when I'm trying to see what time is it going to be deep enough for me to get into this spot, the in between is off by an hour or two, and I've actually had to switch websites to something else actually
Oh, really?
because of
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, because we've just noticed that, and I don't know if that has any correlation with it. What's going on, but the tides just don't seem to be exactly the way they should with the moon phases. So I'm just not sure.
Because
Right.
I was noticing that last week. I was looking at the tide we were fishing up there around Big Island, and it said I forgot what it was. It was going to be a high tide like at 1:30, and it never got to
Mhm.
1:30. It was still dead low. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has been off pretty bad. And on top of that, some of the salooner sites that I've been using for years, I think it's kind of going along with the tides being off. The salooners that they're predicting have been off. So I'm
Mhm.
kind of bouncing around on that, and I've been finding like the one that's closest lately.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're kind of basically just kind of seeing what the tide charts are saying, and then just kind of
Adjusting.
predicting, okay, about an hour from now is when it's really going to be
Right.
extreme low or starting to move in.
Now I wonder, because we've had a lot of talk lately about the extra planets lining up in a row.
I saw
And
that the other day. Yeah.
if that's the case, like the moon and the sun pull on the earth and it changes the tides. Well, if you have a bunch of planets all on one side of the earth, it could be messing up the tide charts.
Yeah. You might be onto something. You might have to call.
Or is it that meteor that's coming this way? It's a
Coming to get us.
percent. It could hit us.
We might
Yeah.
have to call Neil deGrasse Tyson and or Neil deGrasse, not Tyson, but anyway, the astrophysicist, and asked him a question.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching that. I said, "Are you kidding me?" You see all these science fiction movies, and all of a sudden, somebody comes up and says, "There's a meteor that could hit us,
Yeah.
2.3%."
Well, not too long ago, there was a different meteor that was on a course for us, and they actually shot something at it and changed its trajectory. They actually hit it with something.
I saw
Oh,
that in
Lord.
the movies. I don't remember seeing it.
No, in real life, they actually did that. And they're saying, but here's the thing. They can't predict the weather 3 days out. This thing's
Right.
7 years away.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah. I'm there with you.
Well, no,
Yeah.
the water quality, it's clean here, but not as clean as it normally is, George.
No, not nowhere near what we should be having this time of year.
Normally, right now, we should be looking, believe it or not, in Tampa Bay, you can look down 8, 9, 10
Yeah.
feet in some areas
Yeah.
and see the bottom. And it still looks like it's got like a little bit of copper in it or something like that.
I hate to say it. On Friday when I was out, because we had all these hurricanes, we had all this extra rainwater, all this flooding, so all that got dumped into the bay when that all receded. And I went into a cove on Friday, and when I got to the back end of it, it smelled like sewage. So that was kind of heartbreaking.
That's
So we
I
left.
don't know. I can't put my finger on it. It's just not quite the way it should be.
No, the clarity should be great right now. For us, it should be, like you're saying, 8, 10 feet. I mean, you should be seeing rock piles with no problem.
Right. And you don't.
No, I'm pulling up the docks that normally this time of year I can see whether the sheeps that are there or not. And some of the docks, you're only talking 4 or 5 feet of water. I can't see the bottom.
Right. So I don't know. And the
It's kind of
tides, it's like
scary.
you said, the tide charts are off,
Right.
and they're not off by just
Yeah.
5 or 10 minutes. They're off for an hour,
Yeah.
over an hour sometimes.
Yeah. We still have the clear water. I mean, it cleared up faster than we thought it would after the storms this past year. Crystal River, unfortunately, is still very tainted. With those floods, all that freshwater eelgrass just died off. And so all we have is just a silty Crystal River. But once you go farther south, the water's clarity is pretty good. I'm sight casting quite a bit on some reds. So we haven't had that much issue here. But then again, we've got a lot of fresh water flushing out between the Withlacoochee, Crystal River,
Right.
Chaz, all those places. So that might be one of the big differences up here.
I was in a spot, and there was about a 36 to 38 inch snook, and it was a drop off, but then there was like a sand area that it was only about 3 foot deep, like right at the drop off, and this snook came up into that, and there's like sparse grass patches right there, and all we could see was his dark shadow. You couldn't actually see the snook per se like you would normally see in 3
Right.
feet of water over sand.
Right. I mean, this time of the year, you could see them down 6, 7, 8 feet.
Yeah, so that was really disheartening, actually. We hooked
You
it
don't
for a
think
second.
You don't think it has anything to do with them trying to refurbish some of the beaches and just keeping that silt moving around?
No, because I'm up in the bay. I'm way up
Way
in the bay.
Gotcha.
No, because sometimes you can see the silt in the water.
Mhm.
This is the area that I was at on the upper part of the bay. The water's actually kind of like a little tannic, a little brown to it.
Hmm.
You know, it wasn't like if it was dirty water. It just looked more like tannic water.
Maybe a lot of vegetation just decomposing and creating that problem.
Well, I noticed there's a lot of grass flats that are gone.
Yeah.
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 And that,
And-
or if it ain't gone, I'm seeing a lot of like just brown mucky stuff like all over it.
And the other thing too is, you know, oh, I can hear people going to be
don't
complaining,
do it. Don't do it.
but I'm going to say it. There's those manatees, man.
There you go.
Come into an area and
They do.
They'll eat everything.
They wipe it out.
They
They'll
do.
wipe it out.
Yeah.
So we're
And
spending thousands of dollars to seed and put grass flats out, and the manatees come in and eat them all.
mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. And there's not much grass in Crystal River this year. There's not much grass in Homosassa, Crystal River, all those places that they normally would go. And probably with this warming trend, probably moved a little bit down south to find more feeding grounds that are, going to be more susceptible to them, because there's nothing up here. They're having to do a big migration from the springs all the way down 13 miles to hit any feeding grounds. And then they have to come all the way back up the river. And we noticed our numbers as soon as it warmed up, all the manatee just disappeared. So it's possible they went south and stirring up everything for you guys down there.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Okay, I got to laugh. Craig Smith wrote, the tide charts need to be updated for the Gulf of America.
Well, it was a funny thing today on YouTube. There was a guy talking, and Trump said, "There's 1,700 miles of Gulf line from on the Mexico side in the Gulf. There's 1,700 miles on the U.S. side.
Yeah.
So we're just about split down the middle. How much of the Gulf is actually covering our coastline?
Mm-hmm.
So Gulf of America sounds great to me.
Hey.
Yeah,
Hey.
I posted it, and some people had a problem with it, and I was like, I'm not trying to stir up anything. I just think it's funny. It's Gulf of America. It sounds funny, but
It sounds good to me.
and I asked about it, like how it originally got named the Gulf of Mexico, because when you look at it, it's like it could have went either way. But if you look at a really old, I forget, it's probably one of our watchers here that sent it to me. But if you look at a really like ancient map, it actually showed the territory for Mexico going up into America before we got a hold of it.
Yeah, I've seen that one. Yeah.
Yeah, so it actually showed more. And then Louise says, I see greenish water by John's Pass in Facebook post. I've been seeing funky water in a lot of different places, even in the freshwater. I actually reported some fish kills in Seminole ponds, not the lake, but the ponds. There's a few ponds around the neighborhood that I think from that cold snap, a lot of the fish died from that because they can't handle the cold. But the thing that's weird is there's like this green sheen on top of the water. And I don't know, it doesn't look right. So I reported it.
Usually when we have real cold weather for a long period of time, that's what kills all the algae, and that's what makes the water a lot cleaner too.
Right.
And let's face it, we've had a few days of some pretty good cold weather, but overall, we haven't had any steady cold weather to really kill that algae.
No.
Because you're not going to kill it just, and with 2 or 3 days of cold weather.
Right.
We used to get 2 and 3 and 4 weeks. Especially, I remember you would have a week or so in December that it got pretty hot, but already right after Halloween, we used to get some pretty decent weather.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't had that in about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Well, I'm just glad it's cooling down a little bit because I was afraid that, if this warmer trend kept going, it was just going to be a horrible spring and a very, very hot summer. So hopefully we kind of stay in those little 60s and 40s at night to kind of level things out for a while.
I mean, that's perfect. If you get down to about 40 and 65 during the day, all the fish can tolerate it. Water temperature will stay close to 60.
Mm-hmm.
Where the fish, the snook can tolerate it. Redfish has no problem. Trout love it. But when you start getting up to, it gets down to 30 or 40, and then we're back up to 75, 80 degrees.
Yeah.
That doesn't help any.
No, not at all.
I was surprised this morning. I seen 74 degrees. So just like you're saying, I've been concerned about we're not going to have a spring. It's going to go from winter right to summer.
Right.
And that's bad because you know what will happen? Those snook will start coming out of the creeks and out of the rivers. They'll come out to the flats, and then we do happen to get a real cold snap, which last year, the last 2 or 3 years, we've gotten some pretty good cold weather in April.
Mm-hmm.
Right in the middle of April, because I was looking at my records. That could hurt them.
Oh, definitely.
They're out in the open.
Sure.
They won't make it back into those creeks and the rivers. They'll be too far out.
Right.
They're back in their summer habitat area.
So we have Alejandro, Christopher, Roger, Linda Burke, Roger. Donald said the sound is dead on. I had a great outing on Saturday. I'm glad to hear that. He guided his nephew for his 13th birthday to a 19-inch trout on soft plastics. Awesome. Ken Burke was watching Amy, Louise. So that's the rundown I got.
Now. I got Louise. I don't know if Lewis.
You guys watching.
Yeah. So I mean, another thing too, Mike. George and I were filming around Fort DeSoto,
mm-hmm.
and we did a pretty good show. We got into some trout, which is kind of expect, but we went to some of the spots that I used to go to. He used to go to. I mean, we hit some of these spots hard, and we looked at everything. And I think, what is it, George? One dock we saw maybe 2 or 3 sheephead.
One dock had a decent amount of sheep's head, but they were all small.
Yeah.
They were all small. And one dock had maybe 3 snook on it.
And that's it.
And that's looking at an area that normally is loaded.
Right.
We went, this was an area that I would go into, and it was nothing to get 10, 15 big redfish off these docks.
Mm-hmm.
They're dead. I mean, nothing. Just
wow. Well, that's a shame because I spend every Memorial Day week there. Just before and after it, and you do a lot of fishing there. So,
well, I mean, you did good last time. You got some nice reds that last time you went down. I think that was probably Tarpon Key area and stuff like that. But this is some of the like little backwater canals, and especially in the wintertime because it was tucked away. It's warmer, and it used to always hold good fish on those docks. And then out on the flat, there's a few deeper holes that would get stacked up with like oversized trout. And we went across that whole little area that I like, and I seen maybe 3 trout, scoot out, and they weren't like real big or anything. So I don't know if it was a bad day or what, but we caught a lot of trout. I mean, nothing big, but the thing was that day, the trick was all the small bait that were on the flats, the trout were following the small bait school. So if you seen the bait school and you cast it around the bait schools, you were catching a lot of trout.
Caught a trout.
Right.
And they were. You could tell. You see a little pot of bait, you threw it there, and you got hits, and that pod would move away, and you throw around nothing, you know.
Hmm.
But the other thing too is we had live shrimp, live greenbacks, and artificials. And I tell you what, they weren't hitting those greenbacks. There was more on the artificials.
I
Better
like I like the artificials on the flats when we do that type of fishing, especially for trout.
Yeah, they've been a little finicky here as well. We've got them on the flats about 2 to 3 foot of water. I'm sure they're going to change just a little bit because it's a little cooler, but I couldn't get anything on a popping cork, shrimp, nothing. I even tried to Miradyne. The only thing they would hit was jigs bouncing on the bottom.
Yeah,
And they were quality fish, but
right.
they just wouldn't hit anything else. It was weird.
probably because they were sitting down on the bottom, and,
Yeah.
and since you're jigging, you probably got that jig right in front of their nose where he says,
Mhm.
"Oh heck, I might as well eat this thing."
Yeah.
It's there.
Um,
They weren't chasing the bait. That was probably the problem.
That's probably it. Yeah.
Recently for me up in the bay, we were catching a lot of, like, I don't know, maybe a month and a half ago, good sized ones moved in on the trout and we were getting them good. Then all of a sudden somebody flipped the switch and it was 13 to 14 and 7/8 was like what you were catching. I mean, you get 35 of them, but that's what you were catching.
Right.
And then I had a trip recently last week. I started getting into these larger trout, and these guys, oh, you want to catch trout? I said, okay, but just be pre-warned, we're getting some big ones, but we're getting like 30 to 5 keepers. That day, every single one of them was a keeper. I looked like I didn't even know what I was talking about, and
Mhm.
all of a sudden I got this influx with these larger trout. But the thing that's weird is I think because the weather's so messed up in a way, is I'm catching them some places in 3 feet of water, and other places is 10 feet of water.
Wow.
So it's like, are they
They're
doing winter time or they what?
Yeah.
scattered. They're not staying in one place. They're moving around all the time.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a change of depth that's drastic. So it's like they don't know if it's winter time or if it's spring already, is what it seems like.
Yeah, and yeah, we got the same thing here. Some of those sheep's head places, especially on some of the wrecks and some of the rocks, just outside of the rocks, just kind of throwing around because every once in a while the sheephead won't hang on the rocks. They'll kind of move off a little bit.
Right.
They kind of stop. So we kind of, play around a little bit. We're finding some big trout out on those rocks, and we're talking, 5 to 7 miles out from normally where they are at this time of year. So weather's probably got a lot to do with that.
I'll tell you what's, we're fishermen. All of us know about adapting when things change, and we do different things when it comes time. And the thing I've noticed lately is there's a lot of places where some of these trees have broke from the hurricane and landed in the water. Sheep's head magnets, man.
Oh, they
I
are.
am getting sheep's head off these broken down pieces of whatever tree or if it's a broken dock that floated off and then sunk, just loaded with sheep's head.
And you wonder why. What's so special about it?
The tree I don't get at all. Now the broken dock.
I can see the piling because it might have barnacles on it.
Right, I can understand that, but
Tree.
it's just putting the tree. It's just putting structure in the water, but there's nothing on that tree that they can eat. You know what I mean? There's not
Mhm.
like unless they got some fast growing barnacles that happened since the hurricane on it. Maybe I don't know, but
Or maybe there's a feeding area close to there, and they're using that for protection.
for shelter maybe because there's dolphins, everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, we get the branches, a lot of mangrove branches, it's all flat up here. So any type of structure falls in the water, it tends to attract them. And sheep's head, they do. They'll find those mangrove branches or bushes that have sunken down there, and they'll get attracted to them real quick.
Well, I got this one spot right now that I've been fishing for years, but the hurricane broke the top 5 feet of a tree off and blew it into the water, and I couldn't have placed it any better. If you wanted a structure, I couldn't have placed it any better. It literally is the big end of the tree is in 3 feet of water, and it's maybe 5 or 6 foot long section, and it goes down into about 6 feet of water. So right where the drop off is. So I think it's actually got a hole underneath it because of where it's laying.
and then
the
might be sitting under there.
the snooker digging it. too.
Oh yeah, I
But
bet.
you got a few snook, not a lot, but you'll have like 2 or 3 snook, but they're good size, and then you'll have 10 sheep's head all over it.
Nice.
So
It's a good way to find them if you got it there.
now,
It's one of those spots you can always go back to every once in a while.
Mike, are you catching your sheephead up there on fiddlers or using shrimp? Or?
No, mainly shrimp up here. So far, we haven't had too many. We can get fiddlers, and we've got plenty of bait stores that
Right.
do have them, but majority of everybody uses shrimp up here, just on a jig head. And yeah, we're just mainly shrimp. But if I do, they happen to have some around, I may pick up a few, just because every once in a while they get a little finicky.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's not like it was, down there where you guys use more fiddlers
Right.
than shrimp. They're just focused on anything coming toward those rock piles.
Right.
So
for me lately, they are just really. You might get, for me at least, the areas, the docks and stuff that I'm fishing, you might get 1 or 2 sheep's head on the shrimp, but you'll catch 10 on the fiddlers. Right now, they're just really keying in on that fiddler crab.
mhm.
They're being
Yeah, no,
finicky.
when I got it in Pensacola, it was fiddlers all day long.
Yeah.
You could do shrimp and you can have some, but if you had the fiddlers,
Yeah.
that was it. So I think it's just it's an
area.
area.
Yeah.
It's just what's more available in the area.
Well,
Yeah.
like Sergio, you do real well on shrimp out in the bay.
In the middle of the bay, yeah, they seem to love, once you get them going, biting the
Right.
live shrimp, you
Right.
switch over to cut shrimp,
Right.
you eat it just as good. I think it's once you get them like
Yeah.
feeding,
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
then they just go after whatever's thrown down there before the other guy gets it.
But like my last 3 trips out, and it was the same way last year for me. I felt naked if I didn't have filler crabs during the winter because it was like I knew, yeah, we might be able to get some sheep's head here or there, but literally like today, we were looking at 15 sheep's head by this dock, and you throw a shrimp in the middle of it, and it'd sit there and sit there and sit there, and finally you would get maybe 1 hit, and then you put a crab out there. If they were hungry, it was just instant, smack, grab it, 1, 2, 3. So like you're going out tomorrow, I would definitely get some filler crabs just to cover yourself.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to buy some. Hopefully they have them because I go to Gandy Bait and Tackle.
They've been getting them again, so
Good.
hopefully you'll be all right.
And
Because that warm week, that we had, the filler crabs came out.
I don't know how bad the weather's going to be Wednesday, but since we're not filming this Wednesday, I might run out there to the spot and try to catch some fiddler crabs for Friday because I've got another trip on Friday, and I want to make sure I have plenty of fiddler crabs, and that'll give me something to do anyway.
Yeah, I've done that when the stores didn't have them last year. I remember the one day I just made a day of fiddler crabs, and I think I caught 150 of them, and then I put them in this container thing that I made, and so for my next 3 or 4 trips, at least I knew I was covered with fiddler crabs.
Yeah.
The trouble is, boy, they're just as expensive as shrimp now.
Some places are $5.25 a dozen.
I think Gandy
Wow.
is $2.75 a
He's
dozen.
the cheapest. He's the cheapest around for any kind of bait because he goes by volume instead of
Yeah. Well, he buys in big volumes.
yeah. But some of the guys, I think I even heard as high as $5.50 a dozen for filler crabs, and I'm not going to pay that much. I buy them, but that's getting
Now,
a little
Lewis
ridiculous.
says, is Betsy's Bait and Tackle still there?
Where's that at?
I don't know. It doesn't
Betts?
go with me.
Now, there was
Yeah,
bets. I remember bets.
Yeah, Betts, but Betts is not Betts. If you're talking about Betts, that was by Bay Pines boat ramp right there. That's Bay Pines Bait and Tackle now. A friend of mine actually owns that. It was pretty cool. He won the lottery and bought that tackle shop.
Oh, well, cool.
That's
Yeah.
what he wanted to do.
Yep.
Yep, that's he always wanted to have a bait and tackle shop. Quit his job, bought that sucker, and that's where he's been.
Yeah, that was my home base when I lived down that direction for growing up.
Yeah,
Always went to bets.
yeah.
Well,
Yep.
yeah, when I was young, Betts was always around.
Mhm.
In fact, there wasn't that many. Down here, we had Southeastern Tackle, which
Mhm.
is around forever.
Yep.
And then, yeah, well, Gandy Bait and Tackle was just strictly bait. He sells some tackle now, but used to be real heavy on bait. But Southeastern always had no bait, but he had plenty of tackle. And then there was a couple that opened up, but some of these would just last 6 months, a year or so, and then they go out of business. They just couldn't make it.
Yeah.
Mike, do you remember when it turned to it was Ultimate Bait and Tackle after Betts?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Captain Roy
Yeah.
owned it for a while,
Yeah.
but Roy didn't like being there too much, so that was not a good successful business model there.
Well, it's kind of one of those. It's kind of out of the area, so to speak. I mean, there was until because even when Betts was there wasn't many boat ramps except for Bay Pines Park.
Yeah,
and
but you would think
Madera Beach.
Yeah, but you would think being right across the street from Bay Pines boat ramp, which is a pretty big boat ramp and a ton of people use it, you would think it would be a gold mine to be sitting right across the street.
You would think, but I think the traffic and everything, because I did notice, over the years going out, they changed the traffic patterns. Now you had to make a big loop to go back around to get it, and another big loop to come back. Might have been just one of those things there, but
One on Madera Beach. I'm trying to think.
It was up there to the left, just before the bridge. I can't remember.
Mad Dog?
I don't know. There was Rick's Bait and Tackle.
No, there was one back in the 70s and 80s. They used to make a lot of custom rods and everything else.
That might have been Rick's because he used to make rods.
It might have been. My memory's not that great there, but there was that one just over there before the Madera Beach Bridge.
Bait and Tackle or something like that. But they were on Madera Beach.
But it was Rick's possibility because he had Rick's custom rods and then Rick's Bait and Tackle, and it was just right there, like you said, right before you got to the beach.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody that's listening can remember what it was,
We got quite a few reports.
Let's get Tony Franklin.
Okay.
All
right, Captain Tony Franklin back once again with this week's fishing report. This week we've had a lot of different water temperatures like we've had in the last couple of weeks, but it really got warmer towards the end of the week this week. We've got a cool down scheduled to start tomorrow, which will be Monday. Going to cool down quite a bit. But anyway, let's get into the fishing report this week. This week we've had a fantastic week once again with the spotted sea trout. We have some sand trout mixed in. The spotted sea trout has been the key again this week. We caught quite a few larger ones, keeper size. We've caught some 19 inchers, 20 inchers, quite a few fish. Just the bite has been spectacular in the backcountry creeks in the deeper water around the mangroves, around the oyster beds. So the trout bite has been absolutely fantastic this week. So if you want to catch some trout, get out on the water. Shrimp is the key. Tail hooked, head hooked. We tried all different versions of it. We've taken the head off, threaded it on there with a little tiny split shot. Didn't seem to make a whole lot of difference. The biggest key is, depending on the depth of the water, you may want to get that shrimp down in the water column because these trout are hanging a little deep in the water column. But as the water continues to warm, they're going to change their depths. They're going to change their location. So you've got to keep an eye on that. Also, the sheephead bite has been fantastic this week. Caught some nice sheephead around oyster beds, residential docks. So the sheephead bite's been fantastic once again on shrimp. We're catching whiting this week. Quite a few whiting, all on shrimp also. Whiting deeper in the water column, let that bait get all the way to the bottom. They're in residential canals, deeper pockets of water. There's also been some jack crevalles around for action. Once again, ladyfish. Caught quite a few bonnethead sharks this week, so that's added to the action. Also this week, the snook bite has been decent. We've caught them on freeline tail hook shrimp. Caught quite a few snook this week, but as this water temperature starts to cool down a little bit this next week, they're probably going to slow them back down again, but they started to turn on this warmer weather. So the fish in action is looking great. Get out on the water, catch you some fish, tight lines. I'll definitely see you next week.
And thank you,
All right.
Tony.
Good report.
You did a good job. Yep. And he was talking about catching sheephead on shrimp.
Yep. It's like I said, it really depends on where you're fishing.
Okay, Donald said John's Pass, Jim Pace here
I don't
late.
see where he's asking a question.
No, he just said
Okay.
John's Pass from 1957 through 1978. I don't know what it was.
Oh no, he's answering me.
Oh,
But Holt is trying to show me something on
can't read it.
YouTube, and all it says is "Good evening, guys. Okeechobee's watching."
Oh yeah, that was on last week
Small
too.
water charge. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. We
wanna
got
let
some
us-
people that are
you want-
watching us on YouTube and not on our, regular Facebook page.
Yeah, well, I've got both on right now, and yeah, if you want to let us know how the bass bite is out that way, you can always give a little report.
Okay. And yeah, you got Greg Lair says it was Rick's Bait and Tackle.
Yeah, that's the place I was saying.
Yeah.
So maybe that was it. Yeah. Yeah, because up here there wasn't. Gandy has been around for years and years.
Right.
Mhm.
And somebody would show up, like I said, once in a while. Courtney Campbell Causeway used to have a nice bait and tackle place.
Yeah, and his shrimp were expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually there's one right now on Cypress. It's owned by Lacey Bakery, or it was there up to a couple of months ago, right in that little strip right next to Lacey Bakery. There's a bunch of school buses, old school buses inside this gate. And there's a small bait and tackle there. In fact, the guy that was running it was the guy that used to repair rods and reels over Southeastern Tackle.
Huh.
Yep. Yeah. Kevin Overstreet, guy. He's
How you
alive.
doing, Kevin?
Yeah. Good afternoon, Kevin. Glad to see you're all tuning in to us. You can tell there's no more football, Monday Night Football or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny.
Oh, yeah, you know what? One thing though, I can say, and I've really been experimenting with this, guys, and I don't tell anybody. I just want to see what they say. I've been using this really high grade monofilament for leader, and I tell you what, everybody thinks it's great fluorocarbon. It seems to hold up very, very, very good, and it's about a 20th the cost of fluorocarbon, a tenth of the cost at least.
Well, since you're gonna say something like that, when fluorocarbon first came out, of course everybody was, I had some, wasn't using it, and then one day I couldn't buy a bite from a snook, but every chummer I threw out there was getting hammered. So I was like, all right, let me try this fluorocarbon stuff, that just came out. I started catching them left and right. So then I swore by it, and I would outdo people 3-1. Now, fluorocarbon's been out so long, and everybody's using fluorocarbon, and I was having a hard time getting a bite, and I was like, let me try some. I put mono back on, which they haven't been seeing lately for a long time. I actually started getting bites on the mono. So I think that's what's happening is they're getting used to everybody throwing fluorocarbon. They know what it looks like because it sparkles different from the sunlight than mono does. And when you get into that situation, I'll grab mono and put it on just to change it.
Oh, fluorocarbon, the molecules is lighter than mono, so it has a tendency to float, where mono has a tendency to sink. But this stuff, I'm telling you, is crystal clear, and I've been using 15 and they're 25. I haven't had any problems, anything being cut off or broken.
Right.
It's acting just like a fluorocarbon, and the fish don't seem to know the difference.
Well,
Except, like I said, it's so much cheaper.
I'll tell you what, though. Actually, if you put mono versus fluorocarbon on the abrasion resistance, your mono will actually last longer than the fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon is more brittle. It'll break sooner than mono. Mono will have some give to it and cushion that. So it's tougher than fluorocarbon.
You could be right.
Yeah, I use mono quite a bit up here. Every once in a while, I hit fluorocarbon, just depending, and it's usually for snook.
Right.
If they're just really, really being finicky. But I've stuck with mono quite a bit now.
Yeah.
And if we got 25 or 30 pound and they're just not really doing, I'll put different strengths on
Right.
different rods.
Yep.
And I find that if I drop down to 15, sometimes I get better bites on the 15
Right.
than I do the 20, 25.
Yeah.
So I kind of experiment with that. I've got 3 or 4 different spools with different pound tests.
I can
and
tell
just
you
play it
one
that
thing.
way.
You get to some of these areas, like the guys that when we're up there, we fish up at Chassahowiska. They don't use any leader. They tie it right onto the braided line. Well, because they said they break off so much because of the rocks.
Right.
That
Right.
it's number one, it's costly, and number two, it's time consuming. It's so much easier if they break it off, just tie another hook on.
Right.
And you know
Yeah.
what? Here again proves a point. We have no problem catching fish. We were catching trout like crazy last month in Chassahowiska.
But
Yeah.
I've tried that down here with just straight braid to the hook in our area, and you don't get the bite.
Well, the water was a little cleaner. It's cleaner down here than it is in Chassahowiska. But I think sometimes, we carry this a little too far. And this. But I've been using this for now
Right.
6 or 8 months. I've been using this 15 and 25. And I got plenty of fluorocarbon.
Right.
And I put it on once in a while. But I've been asking my people, how do you like this new fluorocarbon? Man, it's good stuff. I like it.
Yeah.
You know?
And like I'm saying, it does seem to be like, because everybody is throwing the fluorocarbon, I've seen it where I'm not getting the hit. And I've got a couple of different monos that I have of different weights and colors that I'll throw, and I'll start getting the bite. The only thing I don't like you're saying about going down to 15 is, man, the snook with 15 just lose
Oh, yeah.
somebody. It
Yeah.
stinks.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, for redfish and trout,
Mhm.
flounder,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's
It's
and
really
sometimes you got to do that with sheephead. Sheephead got pretty good eyes.
Exactly.
sheep's head.
Yeah.
I would say sheep's head and snook are the two that you got to mess with sometimes with
Mhm.
what leader you're using.
Correct.
The other fish, redfish could care less. Really, they could care less.
Yeah.
When I was younger, it was just mono on the reel. There was no leader and a hook, and you just casted it out there for redfish.
It's like years ago, I was talking to one of these guys that fished a lot of grouper, these old guys. And he said, Sergio, he says, putting fluorocarbon to grouper fish is a waste of money. He says, you got a 4-ounce, 6-ounce sinker on a 7-aught hook with a big piece of bait. Do you really think that grouper is going to worry about that you don't have fluorocarbon for a leader? Come on.
Well, I mean, that just, you look at a knocker rig. I mean,
Yeah.
you got that big weight sitting right next to the bait.
Yep.
Yeah, if they're hungry, they're going to eat it. So
You better-
it's just those finicky ones.
We got 15 minutes left. We better run some reports.
Well, let's get Goldman on.
Good afternoon, Captain Bucky Goldman, Bag and Fishing Charters, Tampa, Florida, FishingGuide.com. So I got out. Bait's been getting a lot better. A lot of thread fins in there, mixed with some scaled sardines. Chumming in some deeper water. Actually, has been working for some more scaled sardines. They're starting to show back up the bridges, so that's been good. Still dealing with some real negative low tides and not a lot of water. These fish are really starting to come out of the creeks and canals from the wintertime. And so they're staging up in those creeks, in the mouths of those creeks and canals, working their way out. So fishing's been pretty good. For snook are starting to bite again. Redfish bites kind of consistent. Not a ton of them, but we're still getting them. Trout bite is still really good. Went out the other day. Got a few snook, moved around, caught some more snook, some nice trout, some 6 or 7 redfish, and then we moved off at the last hour of the day, and literally every cast was a redfish or a ladyfish or a nice trout. Caught a couple 18, 19 inchers. I had one little nice pinfish, and I put it on the hook and gave it to the 22-year-old boy, and said, dude, you're going to get smashed. And he threw it out. 10 seconds later, hammered, drops it. I'm like, don't move it. They're going to come back and get it. Bam, hammered it again. It was a nice, like, 18, 19-inch trout. So that was really good. And I've been taking out some of the little kids in my neighborhood and letting them do a little bass fishing. They never really caught fish before. So we've been catching quite a few little bass. So it's been a lot of fun. But I don't really have much time more for a report because I'm cooking dinner. Got crunch time. So, but fishing is fun. Again, I've been seeing some nice bass getting on their beds. They're kind of just checking them out and then moving off. So the males are still sitting on the beds. The females haven't quite moved in. I mean, I saw a really nice 6, 7, 8 pounder looking on a bed, and then I came back an hour later after I tried to catch it, and it was gone. So I think the females are picking and choosing where they want to go right now. So in the next week or so, they might really start setting up on these beds. So it should be good. But got some availability coming up. I'm actually booking up quite a bit, so I'm looking to get out there and looking for some higher water so I can actually get against some of these mangroves and get some of these fish that are hiding somewhere. But they should be pouring out on the flats soon with this warmer water and the snook bite. And one of the main things, though, that moving water tide has been the key to catching fish. So, all right, Captain Bucky Goldman, remember, fishing is fun.
All right, way to go, Bucky.
Thank you. Thank
And
you. For the
I
report.
think, George, let's get Ken Burke on because, we're getting short of
Right.
time here.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
Run
get
it.
Ken Burke
Run
on.
it.
Hello, this is Captain Ken Burke with Captain Kenny's Fishing Adventures fishing report for the South Shore of Tampa Bay. We have been catching some nice sized Key West grunts and mangrove snapper in 15 to 35 feet deep on rock piles and artificial reefs. Use pieces of shrimp on a number 1 hook with just enough weight to hold the bottom. Snook are showing up in some passes near rivers, creeks, and back bays. Using scaled sardines, free-lined, or under a quart. Bait can be found at the towers in the South Shore area. The speckled trout bite has been hot right now in 3 to 5 feet deep grass flats close to the deeper edge. Artificial lures like mirror lure Miradine and paddle tail soft plastics on a 1/4 ounce jig head are getting hit on almost every cast. Ladyfish are everywhere, making for some nice fighting fish with lots of jumps. The water temp in the bay Saturday was 71 to 72 degrees, and on the flats it was 75 to 78. With the weather forecast for some mild cold fronts coming through this week, that should help keep the water temp from heating up too fast. That 75 degrees is that magic temp where all the fish are wanting to bite. So give me a call at 813-758-1212 and book a trip to get some of these fish that are biting good. All right, tight lines, everybody.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate it.
We're, it's good to see that the bite's starting to come back. And, but it still worries me about the Fort DeSoto area. I don't know why. I got a bug about it. Well,
Yeah.
why is it so bad down there in that area?
Well, that red tide hammered Fort DeSoto for a long time. When that moved into that Fort DeSoto area, I mean, it wiped out a lot of fish and pushed out a lot of fish that didn't
yeah,
die.
but a lot of areas get hit pretty bad. Look in the south around where Rolando lives, Pine Island, Boquilla. They got hit really bad. Boca Grande, and they came back.
Right.
It's just something. I don't know if maybe I don't know.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
It's something that's.
I mean, even the grouper docks were dead.
Yeah, I mean,
And this time of year, you could go in there with white bait all day long and catch as many grouper as you wanted.
that one dock that I went to, I always pull up. And I mean, Mike, there's one dock I could pull up there and catch. I mean, sea bass, mango snapper, flounder, some sheephead, and grouper.
Yeah.
I mean, we sat there, George and I. We sat there for 35 minutes and didn't get a bite.
Wow.
It's funny because we've both fished that same dock house for years, and me and Sergio didn't really hang out back then, but it got put on TV, and I cringed like, oh my God, they got the whole background in there. And Sergio had the same problem. He was like, oh my God, you just killed the spot. And it did get hammered for a while. And then, of course, it came back once everybody left it alone. But now that thing was dead.
Yeah.
It was dead.
And this was a place that, I mean, it was
It was
great.
guaranteed.
But this guy, he wasn't a captain. I guess he called Florida Sportsman and said, man, I got this house that I'm catching these 25, 30-inch grouper. And they went to the show with him.
Right.
And what happened was, Mike, this wasn't one of the regular houses that you would find around Fort DeSoto, which the kind of, well, you know, it's this color, but no, this happened to be this brick house, red brick house.
It sticks out like a sore
Sticks out.
thumb.
Everything else is, you know, regular stucco house. This was a brick house that looked like an office building.
Yeah.
So you couldn't miss it. You could see it a
Right.
block away.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what killed it.
What they were doing back then, because I used to be a part of with the Florida Sportsman thing, and what they were doing was on the forum, the Florida Sportsman forum, which I used to be really heavily into that. All these just regular people that were fishing, if they seen somebody posting on the forum daily or weekly consistent, they would call them up and say, hey, would you like to go out on our boat and film? Just take us to the spot.
Right.
And then you would kill your own spot, you know?
Yep. No, I get it. It happens here as well. And it's one of the, I used to do a little more, you know, live videos and all that kind of stuff. And I try to do them, you know, like the reports out there, but you got to kind of hide what you're doing there because it's going to get hit hard after that. And it just happens.
When we go out there and film, we're in a general area.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't pinpoint anything because, you know, it's not fair to anybody else or the captain that we go out with or ourselves. It's a general area.
Yeah.
And that makes it exciting because then people all want to find out, wow, they were out of Chassahowiska. I wonder where they went. Let's look. Hey, there's that tree. It looked like it was falling down. Yeah, there's 50 other trees that look like they're falling down.
Yeah, I've got a grouper rock that has produced for me for the past 2 years. And the location of it is so close to everything around.
I hate that.
That, you know, whenever I fish it, I'll make sure there's no one hanging around because it's right in a trout area and it's so close to everything. I mean, you can get there by kayak. So, you know, if I got people going by me, everybody's just putting their pole down, looking up at the sky. And I mean, just because if it all gets out, my hole, because I'm the only one who fishes it right now, nobody else knows where it's at.
Well, you know, when I was young, I had this old man, and I learned a lot from these older guys. That he took me out. He used to catch a lot of trout off of Gandy, and I went out with him 3 or 4 times. And every time we caught a catfish, he said, "Put him in the bucket. Put him in the bucket." And what he would do is, we'd be fishing the old grass flats there by Gandy, and you know, people would see you hooking fish, and there was a lot of trout, so they start coming up on you. So what he would do, he said, "Now, see that guy? He's getting close to us. The next trout that you get, bring them around the other side of the boat, bring them in, and grab that catfish that we put in that bucket and throw it on his side. Let him look at it."
Yeah.
And he would do that. Another catfish.
Hilarious.
Oh,
That's hilarious.
That's
Say,
good.
"Nah, that's it."
That'll
Mike-
work.
Mike, I got a similar situation years ago. I found a spot that was literally, you were anchored in 4 feet of water, beautiful grass, trout. And if you turned around, there was a drop off that went down to 6 and 7 feet, and there were some rocks down there, and there would be grouper like you wouldn't believe. I mean, like some that you couldn't turn.
Mhm.
So sometimes if I had people there, and we'd have heavier tackle, if there was a boat coming by, because it's in, just like you're saying, one of those areas that's just, you can't not fish there and have a boat go by you.
Right.
Put the big rods down, grab the trout rods.
It's exactly what it is. I mean, I'll have a float hanging out the back, just on a rod hanging out the back, just because.
I'll put it to this way. I got my butt handed to me a few times in a row, like in like about a week's time. I would sometimes for myself, I'd get done. I wouldn't take everybody there because then it would be bad. Sometimes for myself, I get done doing a charter. Maybe on the way back in, I would stop to see if I could catch a nice grouper dinner. and it was beautiful because it's just one of those spots.
Mhm.
Well, all of a sudden I got hammered, and this thing just took me to the shed. Boom. Well, then the next time I went there, I brought my tarpon rod. I figured I'm going to get this sucker. Hooked him again. I mean, it was like I didn't even have drag. It was like, so I think it was a Goliath. Okay.
Yeah.
So then the next time I went there, I brought a 4-aught, 50-pound with a 100-pound leader on there. I spot locked. I put it in the rod holder. I casted him out a small Jack Crevalle. I had the thing locked down. I was at the front because at that time I didn't have a remote control, trolling
Right.
motor. I'm at the front. That thing hit. I put it on full force forward, dragged him away from the
Mhm.
rocks. Spot lock, got on it. Next thing I know, vroom, vroom, he's taking the line back out to go back to the rocks. I grabbed this spool and I couldn't stop him. And he
Wow.
got back and broke me off.
Dang. Yeah, that's a big grouper.
All right,
And then
George, we
there
we
was
gotta get your fishing report in.
Yeah. And then there was divers on it, unfortunately, and that killed the spot.
Yep. Yep. It does.
I mean, 7 feet of water, you're diving on it. Come on.
Right. Yeah.
All right, let's get your
Go for
report.
it. Yeah, go for it.
Hey guys, this is Captain George Hastic of Fish on Fishing Charters coming to you from St. Petersburg, Florida. Well, we've had a lot of warm days in a row and really, warmer than average, and we've had a lot of basically like almost a spring influx early. And this week right now, the fish have been in a springtime pattern. They're close to their wintertime haunts, but they've moved into more shallow water, especially later in the afternoon when the heat has really been warming the water up. I'm finding snook and redfish in 2 to 3 feet of water, really just warming up with the sun, and they're very active at that point. Shrimp is still working for the redfish, but right now, if you have whitebait, which I've been getting, the redfish and the snook are definitely reacting to the whitebait. They're chasing baits down. The water temperature is not that bad right now, so they're active. It's a good time. It's very spring-like. Now we got to watch. We're having a little bit of a front coming in basically Monday, which is tomorrow, and then towards I think it's Wednesday, Thursday, we have another front coming in, and then Friday, Saturday is going to be pretty cool, and I'm not sure how far out that's going to last. Now, if it's only a couple of days, it shouldn't mess it up. If it lasts for a long time, it could push the bait back out. It could push the fish deeper or further back into the canals and or up into the rivers again and or by the power plants. But it just depends on how long that cold lasts. If it doesn't last that long, it's not really going to move them. They'll just drop off the flats or any of the shallow water just into whatever the closest water is where they can get into, let's say 7, even to 10 feet of water. I'm finding the fish, like the trout right now, not to say they're confused, but I'm finding them as deep as 10 feet of water, as shallow as 3 to 4 feet of water. So it's just depending on the time of day, early morning to afternoon when the water really heats up, the fish will move accordingly. And right now, like I'm saying, your canals are still holding fish, but your flats are starting to light up. It really is like a springtime pattern right now. We just have to see how much cold we get in these next couple of little fronts that are coming through, on how much it affects them. But if you're looking for them on the flats and you don't see them, then just think more wintertime. But I don't think that's going to happen, at least not too much. I don't think they're going to push off very far. So with that, your soft plastics are working really good. I'm getting redfish and trout on those. The whitebait is king for the snook right now, like typical. And I'm not even throwing cut baits really that much. I'm throwing live whitebait, live shrimp. Sometimes I'll pinch that tail off for scent. That little extra movement with scent sometimes gets you an extra bite, entices them a little more. Because pinching the tail off right at the first joint where that hard shell stops does not kill that shrimp instantly. It lets it move around, but that scent is coming out of it. So scent's a big thing. On your soft plastics, don't be afraid to put, especially if you're using like a shrimp imitation, or if you're using a sea shad, like I like the saltwater assassin sea shad and the chicken on the chain. Put some scent on there, either shrimp scent, or if you're, like I said, using the sea shad, you can use that inshore scent. But scent definitely helps, but you're definitely going to get more of a reaction strike if you're moving that bait. I wouldn't throw it in a slow working pattern right now. I'd be swimming the sea shad or doing quick twitches on any kind of like a jerk bait type of thing, because they're definitely in the springtime mode. All right, this has been Captain George Hassick. Have a good day.
All right, George. And it looks like our time is all up. So we want to thank everybody for tuning in. And Mike, thank you again.
You're welcome, guys. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, Mike.
And let's hope that the weather, I don't care if it gets cold or whatever. It's the wind.
Yes.
Just control the wind a little bit. Everything
Yeah.
will be perfect. But anyway, thank you, everybody. And let's stay tuned. And don't forget, next week, same time, same channel, Florida West Coast Fishing
All right.
Report.
Have a
Take
good night,
care.
guys.
Good night, all.